more retirees considering to work as high inflation squeezes. A Motley Fool survey shows 44% of retired Americans are considering returning to work due to chronic inflation and inadequate Social Security benefits, which despite a 3.2% cost of living adjustment in 2024, have not kept pace with rising costs. The average monthly Social Security payment of $19.07 in 2024 is significantly less than the $48.18 monthly expense reported by Americans ages 65 and older. Let me say this one more time. The average monthly Social Security payment in 2024 is $19.07. And that is a fraction of what the average American age 65 and older reported spending in 2022, which is $4,818. Okay. So with 27% relying on their sole income, inflation and high interest rates have drastically increased costs for necessities, causing severe financial pressure. Financial struggle has led 61% of respondents to report daily hardships, and many are considering retirement plans. About 25% of non-retired investors expect to return to work due to insufficient savings, while 19% doubt they will ever save enough to retire, with another 19% planning to retire later than expected due to inflation. Tom.
Words talk, numbers scream. We got a bunch of numbers here. It was very interesting. Side by side with this, Harris had a poll, and the Harris poll has been tracking. And boy, it's so surprising that mainstream media doesn't ever talk about this particular Harris tracking poll. In Q4, people said 79% of people said the number one issue, economic issue for them, was inflation. After saying 60% of them saying that economy was number one. Mm-hmm. And they said, what issue in the economy? 79% said inflation. In Q1, that was Q4 of last year. Q1, 82% it's inflation. In middle of Q2, May 10th, just passed by, 84% said it was inflation. And by the way, 75% of the people over 50 in a Harris poll said inflation is continuing to increase. Meanwhile, the federal government is saying inflation's under control. No, when people are saying inflation, it's affordability. And what's happening is these poor retirees and the numbers we just saw are saying, I can't do it. I got to go back. I want to be a Walmart greeter, or I got to do something because I've got a gap and it's the affordability crisis. And I previously mentioned TransUnion's food inflation survey done at the end of Q1 said it was a 30% cumulative increase since the end of Q4 2020. There you have it. There's the numbers. The affordability crisis in America is worse than ever. And now the people who can least afford it are thinking about, man, I got to go back to work. I got to get a side hustle. Grandma has to get a side hustle. Where are we?
I love Tom's commentary here. I'll flip it. Tom always says the following, there's the upstream problems and the downstream problems, right? This would probably be the upstream problem is a 70-year-old who has to go back to work. Sucks. Nobody wants to do that. But the reason that they're doing that is the downstream problem is they just never paid attention to saving enough money and investing. And that's the biggest problem. So what's the message that you guys can take if you're 30, 40 years old, whatever? It's nobody cares about your problems 30 years from now. When it's time for you to retire, 30 years from now, when you go to retire and you're like, well, inflation in 2024, no one's going to care in 2054. They're going to say, what did you do over the last 40, 50 years of your life to get out of debt, stop being paycheck to paycheck, start saving and investing? Because I know one thing for sure, you cannot save your way to becoming a millionaire. You have to figure out a way to become an investor. And you're going to need $1 million, $2 million when you retire at 70 years old, whatever it is, so you don't end up on the government plan. So you guys at home right now, flip a coin, heads and tails. Heads, you're going to have money in retirement. Tails, you're not going to have money in retirement. Because the reality is this, 50% of you are straight up going to be on the government plan. And the other 50% are like, oh shit, I don't want to have to rely on Social Security and I don't have a pension and I haven't saved enough money. I should probably start that 401k thing that they talk about, that Roth IRA thing. I should probably stop living for today and plan for tomorrow. Because if you're 30, you're going to be 40. If you're 40, you're going to be 60. And the reality is if you don't save that money, you're going to end up one of these old people that in 30 years has to go work.
So a couple things. One, we can talk what you should have done, which we have to do that because we have to learn from our parents' mistakes and what they did right, what they didn't do right. This Sunday at church, this pastor gave a message which I thought was absolutely powerful. It was unbelievable. However, one of the messages that you said that I agree with is the fact that this is what happens when you don't pay attention to money. period. You're going to go through this. And you're paying a price for it today that you weren't taking finances seriously. You were being sloppy, not working on another job. You were coming home, making sure you didn't miss a single Miami Heat game or didn't miss a single Laker game because you're a true Laker fan or a Dodger fan, or I'm a Chicago White Sox. So I'm going to come home and I want to watch every single game. Yeah, Chicago White Sox or the Lakers or the Miami Heat, these guys barely pay retirement plan to their athletes they used to play for them, let alone you. They're not going to be paying your bills. Okay, it's kind of like, goes back to that one movie, Bronx Tale, where, the guy's got a Mickey Mantle card, says, does Mickey Mantle pay your bills?
Mickey Mantle pay your rent?
Number two is the following. And by the way, that reminds me of a concert I went to with Siamak years ago when I had lost my voice. I couldn't speak for 6 months. I did a surgery. Siamak took me to a concert in Newport Beach or somewhere like that, Irvine. And it was by a man named, I believe it was Dariush. And Dariush was one of the best singers. I can listen to his music all freaking day long. I love Dariush. One of the things Dariush said, by the way, just so you know, he had some issues back in the days, drug stuff like that. He opened up. He is beloved. People love this guy, right? And he gets up and he says, I want to apologize to all of you. He wanted to give two advice to everybody. He says, I want to apologize to all of you. He says, I want to apologize for not being invited to your weddings. They're like, what are you talking about? He says, because I never sang songs happy enough to be invited to your wedding. So why would you invite somebody like me to your weddings? But you know what he said right afterwards?
What?
He said, I want to say something to the young people in the room here, to those in their 20s, the young wolves, the 30s. He says, make sure the young wolf in you takes care of the old wolf one day you'll be.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Because the old wolf will not have the same fire that you have today.
Yep.
But very soon you're going to be my age. Let me tell you, it leveled me to come back and give that message to other people. So now we all have parents that maybe financially didn't make the right decision or something. We can now go to them and say, how come you don't work for it? We're not in that business. You just want them to live a happier life and realize a part of that responsibility now lies on you, because the government can't do it all by themselves. You have to do it partially. Government's going to do it partially. The reason why government gets 1907 and not the whole 4881 is because it's not the government's job. I'm not supposed to take care of your parents. I'm going to do my part with my parents, right? But taxpayers are willing to pay 1907 portion to Social Security. And the last thing I'll say, which is kind of weird, is the following way. A part of me likes people working in their 70s. And you can call me out and be upset and say whatever you want. My dad has had 13 heart attacks, 3 stents in his heart, bypass surgery, God knows how many angiograms, angioplastics, you name it. He takes 50 pills a day. I'm being sarcastic, but it's a lot of pills he takes every day. He's 82 years old. You know why he's 82 years old? Because he just retired 2 years ago. And he finally moved into my house. Till 2 years ago, he was working. Not because he needed to. He could have retired a long time ago. He kept working because he wanted to stay active. Yep. So part of me, if you're listening to this, and let's just say you're 72 years old or 68 years old, and you're like, I don't need the money, dude, go find a job 2 days a week doing something. Find a way to contribute. There's a part of it that for me is not feeling like it's actually bad for you. You're meeting other younger people. There's something that happens. I'm around Brooklyn. Brooklyn makes me younger, okay? And I'm 45. I'm not old. But even Brooklyn makes me younger, and she's only 2 or 3 years old, right? Now imagine if we're 75. And we're only hanging around 75-year-olds. Dude, you got to go around 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds and 40-year-olds and let them kind of fire you up a little bit.